Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Adventures with Andy. Today, we're going to dye this skein of yarn. And yes, I know, it's already been dyed. It's red, but we are going to overdye it with some Wilton's blue. This is the royal blue. And we're going to see how far in that color will go to turn this red to purple. The yarn that we're using today is Berroco Vintage DK, which is 52% acrylic, 40% wool, and 8% nylon. So it will take color. I originally thought that this was mystery yarn until I pulled it out just now and was like, oh yeah, I did actually leave the tag on there. Look at me. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is go ahead and fill my crock pot up with water so that we can soak this yarn while I mix up the dye. I've tied the two ends to just these silicone zip ties. I only had two of them handy, so I couldn't put it all the way around. I didn't want to cause resist by having it really tight, but they're tied to the ends. I'm actually just going to lay it over the top to see if that helps keep it under water. And then I'm just going to I'm gonna need some more water. I'll be back. See, it wants to float, but hopefully once it's soaked for a while and has soaked up some of this water, it won't float as much. So that's 10 cups of water. It's actually floating at this point, but I've squished out a bunch of the air. So it can just sit here and soak in the water while I mix up the dye. I've gotten so spoiled by the liquid food coloring because it's been a while since I've used the icing gels. I forgot how hard it is to get this one to dissolve. Get it off the spoon. I will. Chad's over there. Already got the mixer in his hand. Janet hints that, hey, you should use this. And yes, I do have a yarn mop. I remember to grab one this time. You may recognize this one. We used it in our last yarn dye when we dyed the leftovers on the yarn mop. That's right, see? Yarn mop cycle continues. Now we get serious. Wow, frothy. All right, so I'm gonna squeeze out any last little bit of air that might be in here. We want to make sure that it's soaked all the way through and it's wet on the inside, because as we know from our episode where we use capillary action to break Wilton's violet, it's not going to want to travel through that dry yarn if it's still dry on the inside. So hopefully it's soaked all the way through. It's soaked how long?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Plus it's going to be in water so it can continue soaking up. So this is 1/4 teaspoon of the Wilton's Icing Gel Royal Blue. As you can see, I used my little electric mixer, got it to a nice froth. Hopefully there won't be any unmixed bits in there. And I'm trying to pour this into the water and not directly onto the yarn, because I won't be able to soak up evenly. Of course, it's going to float You should stay under there. Just like right there would be perfect because you're not touching the bottom, but you're not poking up above the top. You're not going to cooperate, are you? Yes, I'm talking the yarn. You know it works better if you do. All right, I might have to come back and flip this, but for right now, I'm going to just go ahead and put the lid on. The Crockpot is not hot yet, but it is set on high. And we're just gonna let, what? Chad's pointing at the vinegar. I'm not putting the vinegar in yet. And he's just giving me this look like, what are you thinking? Vinegar will cause the dye to strike to the yarn faster. I want to give it a chance to soak to the inside. So I'm going to wait until at least a half an hour has gone by. Come back, check it, flip it, and then put the vinegar in. I want to give it a chance to soak all the way in. I mean, I can wait until the dye bath is completely exhausted before I
Makes
put the
sense.
vinegar in. Yeah.
I was just bringing it up because it was sitting there all along.
Oh,
like,
he's actually going to speak, folks. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. All right, I'm going to wipe up this mess that I made with the dye. And we're just going to let the yarn sit here and do its thing in the crock pot for at least a half an hour. And then we'll come back and check on it. Okay, so it's been about 45 minutes. We still have a lot of color in our dye bath.
nice shade of blue though.
It is. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and flip the yarn cake over. The water is barely warm. I don't know why. I would think it would be hot by now. It's on high. I've made sure of that. It's just being cranky, I guess. Chad is getting videographic evidence. It's also possible that it's taking longer to warm up because this is 10 cups of water in here, which is more than I normally use. Actually, 11 cups total when you count the dye. And that's more water than I normally use, so. Because the cake, where it's been sitting in the water, and it's floating, it's not really sitting on the bottom, but where it's been on the water closer to the bottom, I guess, that's warmer. So, and you can see we haven't really gotten a lot of color yet so far. We've sort of taken the red to a burgundy, but we still have a lot of dye left to go. So, put the lid back on and let it keep soaking. Okay, it's been another half hour. Let's give this another check. Still have a lot of dye in there. Basting the yarn. Okay, we're at a burgundy, but we still have lots of color to soak up. So, yep, just gonna let this sit and soak it up. Look in comparison. That's what the yarn looked like originally.
Yeah, look a lot darker.
You can see it's darker, but we still have a lot of dye still to. Okay, so left the yarn out here for a while I went inside and played a video game and promptly lost track of time. It's been in here for 4 hours now. Came out here, the water was boiling. I've never actually had water get to the point of boiling when I was doing yarn before. Still have some dye. I guess it's a really good thing though that the yarn was floating, because then I don't think we have any risk of burning it. I don't know that I've ever seen Chad dive for a cord to unplug it so fast before. Oh, how funny. How funny. The yarn's getting to a nice burgundy wine color. But since we do still have some color in here, I'm going to go ahead and put some vinegar in. Then we'll just let this sit out here and cool overnight. What do you think, Chad?
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah. Whew. I really wasn't expecting that one. It was a first.
The smell of boiling animal fiber.
Oh, honestly, should have turned the camera on before we unplugged it so you could see how it was boiling. But our first thought was, fix the problem. All right, so here we have our half teaspoon measuring spoon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Accidentally touched it with the tip of my finger. Was not trying to.
Stoneware or the water?
The water.
Ooh. Well, it's about 212 degrees.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah.
So that's 3 that's 3 tablespoons of vinegar. That's a good start, I think. And now the question is, do we put our yarn mop in? The reason that's a question is because when I was mixing the yarn up, I had Chad take the foil top off of the little container of the Wilton's icing gel. Before, I had just poked through it, I guess, and was scooping out icing gel food coloring through that, but there was so little left that needed to be able to get in there really good. So I did that. I mixed up my dye, right, as you do. And then while the yarn was sitting there the first few times, first little while, I was like, you know, I should clean the excess icing gel off of that foil cover. I know, I'll use the yarn mop for that. Mistakes were made largely doing that because it was a whole lot of icing gel. So this is what the yarn mop's in right now. It's just kind of doing its own dye thing. Yeah. I don't know that there's any undyed area left on that yarn to pick up anything.
You might need to start another yarn mop.
We might have to. We might have to, because
that's gone blue.
Yeah, it's blue. It's blue. There's
dark blue.
We'll see if we need to get a new yarn mop in the morning. I'm wondering if I should. I don't even know if this will fit in here.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Plenty of room. Plenty of room for the yarn cake. We're just going to let all this sit here and cool down overnight. We'll be back. And here is our finished yarn. I went ahead and left it on the Yarn Swift because I think it's a little easier for you to see the color gradation that way than it would be if I took it off this and twisted it into a skein, twisted it into a hank. I have to say, first of all, let me say, I really like this, but it is completely not at all what I expected. I expected, since we were adding so much blue, that we would end up with a true purple down here at this portion. And that is not what we got. We've got much more of sort of a burgundy color. And I don't think it's for lack of blue, because if you look at these skeins, especially on the inside, it is so dark purple that it looks almost black. I think what's doing it is that this yarn is 52% acrylic. And while the wool in it and the nylon in it will take the dye, the acrylic isn't going to. So the acrylic stayed the red that this yarn originally was. And we've got sort of a haze of that red on the outside of this really dark purple, and going up into the lighter sections of the purple of this burgundy. So we've got that red on the outside, which is kind of giving us this sort of burgundy look instead of the true purple I was expecting. I'm going to have to go back some time and try cake dyeing a skein of red yarn that doesn't have acrylic in it. I'll have to check my stash and see if I have some. You would think I would, but that's not guaranteed. If not, I can dye some yarn red and then go back and cake dye it like this. But I really do like how this turned out. It's a really nice, interesting gradient, long color change gradient. It makes me think of wine. I'll admit it, it does. Wine, or maybe like jam or something. I was also really surprised that we don't actually have a section that is just pure straight red at the top, which would have been the inside of the cake. And I was expecting that we would. I wasn't expecting to have the dye penetrate that far in. I know that here on the end, we've got some of that purple burgundy color, because this was the end that was out from the center of the cake. But it's not just there that we're seeing that. It's all throughout here in this top section where the red is. This would have been the center of the cake. And yeah, we got color all in there. But it does give this really interesting palette. Now, to show you by comparison, this is a little bit of our original color that we had. And that's how much color we got from dyeing it. That's how much it changed. And really, even if you look up here at the top, even where it's red, it looks a little bit like a different color. It doesn't look the same. But yeah, definitely down here at the bottom, we definitely got just a really, really pretty burgundy color. Now, normally, as you know, on long color change skeins, I don't do a swatch because you can't really get the full effect of it because it takes so long to get that change. But I'm really curious about how this portion up here is going to knit. This down here, I think it's going to be pretty uniformly this burgundy color, but this up here where we've got this mix of the red and the lighter burgundy and the darker burgundy, I'm really curious how that's gonna knit up. So here we go. This is a 30 by 30 swatch that I knitted up on size 7 needles, and you can see how we start out with more of the red here at the bottom, and as we go up, it changes to where we get more of that sort of burgundy color that we have down here at the bottom. And I think it looks really cool. I love the way it does that. it's not really a blending effect, but it's a nice integration. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but I like it. It looks cool. You may notice that the swatch is still attached to the skein of yarn. That's because this took up a lot of that red portion of the color change. We didn't have a lot of it that was the mostly red part. And I want that in whatever I end up making with this skein of yarn. So I'm going to end up unraveling this swatch. And of course, we can't forget our yarn mop. This turned out fantastic. I love how this turned out. This is so pretty. I am going to have to see if I can go back and recreate this on a full skein of yarn. This is just so pretty. I love these colors together. And what works out fantastic is this will be perfect for the edging on the watercolor paw print shawl that I am getting very close to needing to put that edging on. And no, you're not going to get a swatch of this one because I'm going to need probably every single bit of this skein of yarn to do that edging. So you'll just have to wait until I finish the shawl and you can see how it turned out. But this does just go to show you that sometimes mistakes work out awesome. Sometimes mistakes are good things. Like Bob Ross used to always say, happy little accidents. Anyway, I hope you had fun overdying this cake of yarn with me and creating a beautiful accidental yarn mop. Be sure to like the video, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do that so you don't miss any adventures, and make sure you turn on that notification bell. Have a wonderful day today, and I will see you all on our next adventure. Bye! Momo, are you helping? Yes. Are you helping? I love you. You just want to be patted home.